Yeah. So we can begin to notice the content of the thoughts. And Jack Kornfield calls this exercise the top 10 tunes, that people will have sort of a top 10 playlist. If you really start to sit and watch the thoughts, they will sift out kind of into categories. So to make this more clear, I have, for me, it kind of works. Can you see this? I don't know how close I am. Maybe I'm not that close. Can you see that? Okay. So for me, I view it as mixing bowls. Like what happens is the different types of thoughts really fall into categories, and they kind of go into these buckets or bowls. One of the big ones is planning or past and future thoughts, right? How much of the time is maybe you're talking about, say, for example, I wonder if we're going to make what I'm going to have for dinner tonight, because and then there could be, because I never make dinner or whatever, there could be a belief under there, more kind of an a la carte thought. Thanks so much for joining the party. Um, but it could be, what are we having for dinner? But again, we're not here when we have to have some planning, by the way, or we would never save any money. We would never put on deodorant because we wouldn't think that we might offend people. We'd never leave the house, probably. We have to have a certain amount of forward thinking and planning. And the human mind, it can be so creative and imaginative. And so that's the beauty of mind. It can kind of go either way. But the planning or the past and future thoughts, ask yourself how many of the thoughts you had might fit in this bowl. So there's that. And then there might be the worry bowl. The worry bowl. How many of the thoughts are actually, if they were distilled down, they would come, they would simply be some form of worry, whether it's for ourselves or others or the planet, it's some form of worry. Then we might have, if I could get that out of here. Okay, this is kind of a big bowl. So I'm going to go with, this is comparing. When we compare in some form, and we have to have comparing, because we have to say, well, I'm going to eat that, or I'm going to eat that and not that because that's poison, or I'm going to make choices. So it's just some form of comparing. But this kind of comparing is the kind of comparing that leads to more suffering, not less, because it usually leads to poorer choices. It's usually we're comparing ourselves. Oh, that person's meditation looks flawless, right? That person looks amazing. They've lost 15 pounds during this pandemic. How did that, like, and then it's a whole big thing, and it's usually attached to, again, some form of judgment. And the judgments, even when they are against another person, are so often, they're really us projecting and judging ourselves harshly, right? And then some form of inflation or deflation, where again, we're looking at somebody and we're like, okay, or ugh, based on what other people's lives are like, or what's out there. So there's that. A lot of thoughts are, well, no, they're not a lot of thoughts. That's why they're in the kitten water bowl. Joy and gratitude, those are also, this is a thought bowl. But you'll notice that for most people, which one is the biggest? The not being here bowl, not being now. Joy and gratitude is the kitten water bowl, for a lot of people. And then finally, peace and equanimity. Like that's not even, I mean, that's just a little chopped parsley bowl. That's nothing. That's for most people. Okay? So, and inside each bowl are all the longer thoughts. They're just like pieces of paper, like almost like a fortune cookie, that they fit in here. So, here's what I'm going to say. A huge part of the practice, this is a major insight when it comes. And I can say it, I've heard it, but until we really sit and watch the mind and become quiet and notice the fact of the matter is that the thoughts, it's a waterfall of thoughts, and it never stops. It never stops. It just goes and goes and goes. And maybe there's a cosmic hand tipping it. And guess what? It's the pitcher that it's going to refill no matter what I do. And then we end up with all of those thoughts inside that bowl. They end up being like a mind soup. It's this really, but I have good news, which is that we can take this and we can turn it into paper mache with cultivation and we can create something. Now, what would happen if we added a little bit of the waterfall, you know, to the peace bowl? Because what happens is wherever the waterfall and our attention goes, this grows. Whatever it is will grow. And so the really interesting thing about our minds and more really our hearts is that we can expand. Our container will expand to fit whatever we are focusing our attention on and whatever seeds we are watering. That is what grows, right? So the container grows as well. So what would happen if we watered peace? That would be such a different experience, right? But often we're just keep without even thinking about it. We're just the waterfall's just pouring into the planning or the self-judgment or the other things, and then we just end up with this mess to clean up. So there's that. Um, so that, like I said, this is a major insight that it's a waterfall and it won't end. And that also we can, with time, when the mind becomes still, I'm guessing that probably what we all want to know is, okay, but how? How do we do any of this? Well, one, it's practice. And the primary way, there's a huge farm truck going by right now, if you can hear that. I don't know if you can. Part of the way that we do this is by unhooking from the thoughts. And so we put ourselves into states where we're not thinking. That is why mantra works so well. It's the repetition of chanting, or often in certain forms of meditation, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be well, may you be free. It doesn't say, may you be free of thoughts, right? But the repetition unhooks us. A wonderful way to unhook is to go into nature, because when we are gardening, when we're working outside, when we're connected to the earth, we're not up here. We're here at the level of the soul, at the level of imagery, at the level of working with and not against. So that's part of the way that we can unhook from the thoughts, and the beliefs that we have about ourselves are persistent, and we won't be able to talk about all of those today, but I would love to hear what some of those are for you, and how we might work with them in the future. So I'm going to come back to center, supposedly, and then let's have some questions, and let's talk about this a little bit. And if you do have any questions about the practice of mindfulness of thoughts, or anything I know that I have learned, I am happy to share. And then we'll do some practice. So if you want to unmute, and what is your experience with the waterfall? Anyone?
I love going out into nature. That's always one that helps me more than anything, just because that interrupts the loop the most quickly, I think, for me. But I'm so glad that you just said mantra, because sometimes I actually forget. I forget these things that we know, that we've heard millions and millions of times, right? But then to hear somebody say it again, I actually was just like, oh my gosh, how have I not been doing that lately? Yeah, so anyway, that's another really good one for me that I did for a while. I used to just listen to the like Om over and over and over sometimes when I needed to interrupt that loop.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, because I will start using that again today.
Yeah, and thank you also for speaking to something that works, because sometimes we'll use something for a while and it works, and then we shift methods, and then we'll come back to something that's, again, this universal sound. It's almost so simple that it feels, like that can't work. Going outside, that can't work. So I hear you. And changing our mantra. I mean, of course, any sound that's one of the universal sounds, but we could also use a word that is really useful to us right now. Peace or shine came to me for some reason. It doesn't matter what
Stacia, I'm having a hard time hearing you all of a sudden. Mike, are you feeling the same? Because I saw you move up.
Yeah, you're kind of breaking up a little bit.
I wonder if it's my ear thing, and I'll just take it off, and if that will help. I don't know why that would be true, but let's try it.
Oh, Shauna said she is too.
I'm sorry. I don't know where the thing is. If I don't, all right, let's see.
I don't want to miss the good stuff.
Oh dear, technology. And now, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay, so thank you for letting me know that. And then
Sure.
I had all these thoughts about, I'm terrible with technology. I can't, I can't. It's so interesting the way it just buzzes in there and activates all these other identity mummies who are lying on the floor right now. Maybe needs some attention. So, yeah.
I have a question about that. Do you, and I thought of this earlier, but in all of your sort of work and learning and everything, what do you feel is the reason why we all do this so much? Is it, was it, and I know there are many, many theories. I guess I was just sort of curious. Do you have one that comes up, or something that that's come in lately for why we do this so much?
Why we overthink?
Yeah. I know that's a crazy question, isn't it? But you know how sometimes, like, you just learned something recently and that was what makes so much sense, or...
Yeah.
And I know we've talked about neural pathways and stuff, so just...
That
sometimes
always...
I think...
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Ursula. I didn't interrupt you. Tell me what you were going to say. Sometimes you think...
Oh, I just think we have so many... Like, we learn all these different things about why we do these things, but I wondered if for anyone something comes up, like, is it just how we were parented? And I don't mean to put all this on our parents, right? But like, or is it really ancestral? Or is it just the combination of all of it? And yeah.
Do you want where I have come to? I mean,
maybe that's what it is. Yeah, okay. Where you are with it right now, because I know we all have our own answers, right?
Right. I came to it probably through the thinky, I value my own intellect and I love to read, and so the neural pathways, all that makes sense. However, I also really from my heart, I simply believe that we are here to learn to be in a body, and we are here to remember, like to come back to, oh, this is who we are. Many traditions believe that, this is just a play that's happening. This is an unfolding of, it's a cosmic game. It's the divine remembering itself. We're here to see each other, because really there's only one of us. And I believe that. I tend to believe we're here to open our hearts and to rediscover. It's kind of a funny thing, because all of the things that are so childlike, I'm just getting now. Like, oh, and I think we knew all of this when we were little children, and it just got kind of pummeled out of us. Oh, we are magical, magnificent beings with unlimited capacity. That's what I'm coming to more and more, is like, just stay out of here. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's helpful.
Yes. So maybe partly, like, we got there really because of just that whole, as we learn, we get brainwashed once we start going to school, or we get up here way too much, right? So maybe if we went to school and learned, like, about, if we had a half of a day like this, we would all do this less as adults, maybe, right?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe. It's unbalanced. It certainly is
not balanced the way that our society, especially because our society values intellect, mind, think, do, plan, succeed. That's not every culture. Let's see.
Yeah. And Shauna just wrote that too, right? About culture. That's so neat, right? When you said it.
Right. It's this is how we just I also believe the pandemic has been a great gift to us for that. Yep, at the same time. Right? It's been a gift because people who've never had time to go inward are doing that now and realizing like, well, there's no, the old adage, there's no place to be, there's no place to go, really. I mean, there's only now. Well, nothing like a good quarantine to get you to be in now if that's at all comfortable. It can be very uncomfortable. So, especially when we're bombarded by thoughts, and I'm wondering if anyone has any sense of if this is, because it's not a problem, it's the way that it is, but are there times when the thinkiness is greater? Because I'm hearing that in nature it's less. What other things kind of tip your scales one way or the other?
Stress. And when there's high stress, then my mind goes crazy. All of the, what about this? What about that? What this might happen? The planning or really just projecting what could possibly be, and usually it's a bad thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's my big one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stress. And thank you for mentioning that because well, for many reasons, um, this part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, this is our ability to sort of talk ourselves down and have empathy and compassion, and do like this whole part of our brain back here is like once it becomes activated and your amygdala becomes activated and you're in chronic stress, it's hard to come back because we really flip our lid, and then it's that loop of like this tiger chasing its tail. You can't really get a hold of it. So one thing that really works, that was suggested to me by a dialectical behavior therapist for stopping the loop, especially if you have kids who struggle with this. I love this so much. Is the old timey ice pack. The old timey ice pack, which it really has ice in here, right here. Right here. And so, I ought to apply this to myself too. It kind of just, it startles your system. It's almost like a reboot. And it really, I can say that with my son who struggles with the looping and the perfectionism and the just going off, going over the cliffs of more, can't, can't reel it back. We will just, okay, let's stop, because we can't get space from it. And I think, so common to say I think rather than I feel. I know that if I used this ice pack more, because I'm too proud to use the ice pack when I need it. If I use the ice pack more, some of that might untangle. So that's a method for untangling. What else? Worse, better? Comparing mind, but is anybody afraid of their own minds? Like, I'm not going in there. Nope. Without some, and oftentimes people do resist sitting for that reason. I don't want to go in there. I don't want it to get quiet. I don't know what I'm going to find. And a lot of the things are below that level of awareness. There are a lot of things we think. Boy, there are an awful lot of things and beliefs that we are not quite aware of. And they can come up with enough quiet that they will unravel a little bit.
Yeah, I often want to think that I'm not afraid of that, because I do meditate and I do go into nature and I do all these things, but then when it really gets down to it, sometimes I find that, instead of going to do that when something's going on, I end up picking up the phone and looking at Facebook, or it's just interesting the things that we distract ourselves with. And it's so interesting that you talked about the quarantine, because I sometimes, I think I've been sort of half and half during it, because there have been many moments when I have been able to become grounded, and more meditative and really feel what's coming up. But then other times it's almost too scary, because we're too close and we can't get away if we really need to right now. So sometimes I can feel that I avoid that too.